Hello everyone, and welcome back to SoothingStorm ASMR. In today's video, I'll be reading scary stories from Reddit. All the stories will be linked down below, and watch all the way through so you know how they end. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the soothing storm. The first story is called Don't Let Me In. A girl was heading back home from her part-time job at night. It was a particularly hard night, and all she could think about was heading home, going past the dark alley with a flickering street lamp. She was startled by the ringing of her phone. She pulled out her phone to a message sent by her boyfriend. It read, "What's up?" The girl replied back, heading back home from work. After she sent the message, there was a bit of a gap before the boyfriend replied, "Can I see you tonight?" The girl was really tired and was not in the mood to meet her boyfriend, so she replied, "Let's meet tomorrow. I'm really tired." There was a pause, then a reply, "Okay, good night." The girl arrived home and quickly took a shower to go straight to bed. But before she jumped into her bed, the phone rang again. She looked at another message from her boyfriend that read, "Whatever happens, don't let me in." The girl didn't know what the message meant. Was her boyfriend coming over? Why would he tell her not to let him in? Was he drunk? She texted him back, asking what he meant by it, but there was no answer. She tried calling, but the phone was turned off. Now suddenly, she was completely awake, and now uneasy, with the eerie feeling that something was amiss. Just as she was wondering about the message, she was startled by the ringing of the doorbell. She walked over to the door. Usually, she would just open the door straight away, but this time, something stopped her. "Who is it?" No answer. "Is that you?" she asked, thinking it may be her boyfriend. Then a slow and low-toned voice answered from the other side of the door. "Yes, let me in." There was something strange about this voice. It didn't sound like her boyfriend at all. The girl moved closer to the door and peered through the security hole. On the other side, she saw her boyfriend's face, closely leaned towards the security hole. "I can't see you properly. Can you take a step back?" There was no answer. "If you lean too close like that, I can't make you out properly," she said again. That low-toned voice came back. "It's me. Let me in." The girl was lost in thoughts. She can see her boyfriend through the security hole, but something wasn't right. It was as if he didn't want her to see the whole picture and trying to cover the hallway with his face. The girl was now scared. "I don't want to see you tonight. Please go home," she said with an ounce of courage that she mustered up. But the low voice replied, "It's me. Let me in." Slowly a cold shiver swept and terror sunk into the girl's heart. Without hesitation, she dialed 911 and shouted, "I'm calling the cops." There was no answer. The girl waited for the cops to arrive, but the low voice came in again. "It's me. Let me in." The girl was now frantic and couldn't hold herself from shaking. "The cops are coming. "Go away," she screamed, hoping he would leave. But the cold, low, and calm voice came back. "It's me. Let me in." It seemed like hours until the cops did arrive. They urged her to stay inside the house, but the frantic and angered girl rushed out to confront her boyfriend. But what she saw was only his severed head, lying on the floor in front of her next to a bloody text that read, "Shame. I was so close." The next story is called "Terry Was a Monster." Being a correctional officer at a prison on the death row wing was usually pretty tame. I worked 12-hour shifts, usually overnight, as they can be the most interesting. Most of the time, I cross paths with the men and women who have pretty much accepted their fate and don't cause much of a fuss. Those individuals have been on death row for a while. They watch their court appeals and attorneys' visits dwindle down with each month or year that passes. Being on death row is slow-moving and unnerving for the individuals who sit among it. What some people don't know is, being sentenced to death row does not mean you're immediately taken to the electric chair or injection site. You sit in a small cage for 23 hours out of the day in most cases, and await word from your attorney. An individual can be given a DOD or a date of death, be strapped in, and believing their last few moments are among them, and their attorney can call and make an appeal, prolong the process altogether. It rarely happens that way, but it's possible. Most people on death row live out their days in their cells, drawing and writing. Last week, an inmate whose name I won't release here wrote an apology letter to the families of 24 of his victims. His last wish was that they all receive a copy, although I'm not sure that they ever will. Most inmates come in and somber their way across the infinite number of days until their execution, and they don't put up any kind of fight. They've been through the court process and had a determination made, and eventually accept their fate for the hideous crimes they've committed, most of them. Terry, however, was a different kind of death row inmate. He was a monster. Of course, Terry isn't his real name, but Terry was the hardest inmate I've ever had the pleasure of dealing with. His final tally was 50+ charges of murder, all involving premeditated and gruesome tragedies. He murdered entire families, people by themselves, and even people he knew. The crime scenes were absolutely brutal, and when he was brought in, he would recount the murders with an evil smile on his face. Terry didn't even try to plead insanity in court, because he was horrifically proud of his slayings. He laughed throughout the entire time the victims' families or friends spoke. His utter disregard for human life was disgusting. Terry only got an hour of sunlight each day. That hour was always one that we all dreaded, as we knew that Terry would conjure up some kind of destruction if he had the chance. He had instances where he would break out into violent episodes in his cell after being brought back inside. Even cases where he would brutally attack other correctional officers. Each day, dealing with Terry was a nightmare for everyone in the prison. He would scream for hours on end, or yell horrendous atrocities at us as we passed by his cell. He would laugh as he yelled through the concrete wall at the other inmates and tell them how he would brutally dismember their families if he got the chance. Every single day, he would destroy his cell and everything in it, just to have a shot at injuring or killing other officers. The reason I'm telling you all this is because 2 days ago was supposed to be Terry's DOD. I say supposed to be because at the final second before his death, something went wrong with the injection process. He didn't die, and instead endured tremendous amounts of pain. And since the Eighth Amendment gives us all the right against cruel and unusual punishment, he'd get a shot at another long and strenuous court process. But Terry was a monster, and I wouldn't allow him to continue this process and the endless torment of the victims' families. His entire existence only brought pain and brutality to this earth. This is why last night I waited. I waited until the other guards were doing their rounds. I waited until the full moon was the only light that shone through the small window of Terry's tiny cell, and waited as my bones broke and rearranged themselves. I waited as my fur spouted and my uniform ripped violently from my body. I waited as my canines extended and my snout elongated and my eyes lit up like brilliant fire. I waited until Terry was awake from his sleep and thudded over to his urinal. I waited until Terry finished relieving himself and turned to face me. I waited as Terry yelled in absolute horror at the beast before him as I gently unlocked his cell, my gaze never once leaving his. I smiled a big toothy grin with a joy unmatched as he trembled in fear and begged for his life, just as his victims had before him. As I tore at his chest and ripped flesh from his bones, I made him suffer to the fullest extent, a possibility that he never would have had from lethal injection. As his screams deteriorated, I turned to the moon with a blood-soaked maw, and I found myself smiling yet again, because Terry was a monster, but so was I. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit the like button if you did, and comment down below with any stories, readings, or triggers you'd like to see more of on this channel. I'll see you next time with another Soothing Storm.